You weren't just heartbroken. You were misled by the very thing you trusted most, your instincts. They told you love was simple, that if you were kind, loyal, and real, she would stay. They said vulnerability was powerful, that opening up would bring you closer, that if you just showed your heart, she'd hold it gently. But that's not what happened, is it? You tried. You showed her your truth, and she changed. Suddenly, the warmth was gone. The text slowed down. The silence got louder. She didn't say why, she just drifted. And you were left staring at your phone, wondering how love could vanish so fast. Was it something you said, something you didn't do? You searched for answers, you blamed yourself. But the truth isn't where you think it is. There's something no one told you, not your parents, not your teachers, not even your friends, because they don't know either. But once you see it, really see it, you'll stop chasing approval. You'll stop bleeding for love. There's a part of her you were never meant to see, a part older than romance, older than reason. And once you understand it, everything changes. Thank you for being here. And if something in you just whispered, "This is what I've been needing to hear," stay with me. The truth is deeper than you think. Daniel Carter thought he had found it. The kind of love they write songs about, the kind you grow old in. Her name was Emily. She wasn't just beautiful. She was warm, attentive. Someone who made him feel seen in ways no one ever had. They met at a tech meetup in downtown Austin. She laughed at his jokes. She asked real questions. She remembered small things like the way he always ordered 2 sugars in his coffee but never stirred it. For a while, everything felt right. They had Sunday rituals, movie nights, walks that didn't need words. She looked at him like he was her world, and he believed her. Not because he was naive, but because when someone looks at you like that, you want to believe. So he did. He gave her his loyalty, his dreams, his quiet moments of doubt, and she accepted them all, or so it seemed. There was a night under a Texas sky scattered with stars when she turned to him and whispered, "I've never felt this safe with anyone before." That night Daniel thought, this must be what forever feels like. But the thing about illusions is they don't fade gently, they shatter. It didn't happen all at once. There was no big argument, no betrayal, just small things. She started responding slower, stopped laughing as much. The way she looked at him changed, not colder, just less. Daniel tried to hold on. He planned weekend getaways, bought flowers for no reason. Told her she was beautiful even when her eyes looked tired. But love, the kind he believed in, slipped through his hands like water. And then came the words that don't scream but echo. "I just need space. I don't know if it's you or me. You're not the man I fell in love with." Each sentence left a bruise, not because they were cruel but because they were true. Daniel stood there, heart wide open, watching the woman he loved quietly walk away. And that's when it hit him. Love wasn't what he thought it was. It wasn't soft. It wasn't safe. And it definitely wasn't unconditional. It was something else. Something he didn't understand yet, but he would, because what broke him was about to rebuild him from the inside out. And if you've ever watched someone change right in front of you, if you've ever been told, "I love you" 1 month and "I'm not sure" the next, then maybe, like Daniel, you're not here to stay broken, you're here to begin. Daniel didn't fall apart overnight, but the cracks started showing long before anyone noticed. It began when his company downsized. A polite email, a handshake, and suddenly his identity as a lead product designer was gone. He told himself it was fine. He'd bounce back, tech was always hiring. But the interviews were cold, and the silence afterward was colder. The stress grew quiet but heavy, bills piled up, his confidence slipped. He'd stare at his resume for hours and feel like a fraud still. He smiled around Emily, tried to keep the charm, made jokes, acted like nothing was wrong. But inside, he was scared. One night, sitting across from her at their favorite ramen spot, he finally said it. "I don't know who I am without that job." She looked at him, nodded, but her eyes flickered. Something shifted, barely noticeable but real. Daniel thought opening up would bring them closer, that sharing his truth would deepen their bond. Instead, he felt her pull back. She became busy, more tired than usual, started mentioning she needed time to think. At first, he blamed the economy, then himself. He thought maybe he wasn't trying hard enough to fix things. So he doubled down, cleaned the apartment, cooked dinner, asked how her day was even when his felt hollow. But no matter what he did, the air between them thickened, like he was chasing something that didn't want to be caught. One night she came home late. Her voice was kind but distant. She said, "I think I just need some space right now." That sentence hung in the room like fog, thick, still, unavoidable. Daniel didn't fight it, didn't beg. He just sat there, nodding, pretending to understand. But inside he was screaming. He had shown her his rawest self, not to gain pity but to be seen, to be held. And instead, he was left alone with the echo of his own honesty. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was confusion, a quiet betrayal of everything he thought love meant. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've opened your soul to someone, only to watch them slowly walk away. If you have, leave a comment. Even just me too. Because silence feels lighter when it's shared. Daniel's silence wasn't weakness. It was a door, and behind that door was something no one warned him about, the shadow, not hers, his, and it was about to speak. It started with the little things. Emily used to smile when he walked in the room. Now she barely looked up. The warmth in her voice, the spark in her laugh, all seemed dimmed. Daniel noticed. He noticed everything. But he told himself not to overthink it. She was tired. Work was stressful. Maybe he was just being insecure. But then came the distance. Texts that once had hearts and exclamations now read like updates. The kind of text you send a coworker, not a lover. He tried to be patient, tried not to panic. But there's something primal in a man when he feels her slipping, something desperate. So he leaned in harder, planned a weekend away. Left her notes around the apartment. "I'm proud of you. I believe in us." She didn't say thank you, she said. "You don't have to try so hard." That sentence hit like a wall. He wasn't trying to impress her, he was trying to hold on. And maybe that was the problem, because the more effort he gave, the less she seemed to feel. It was as if every display of vulnerability, every sign that he needed her pushed her further. Daniel found himself walking on eggshells. Afraid to ask questions, afraid of the answers. He stopped talking about his job search, stopped sharing how lost he felt. He thought, maybe if I just act like I'm okay, she'll come back. But love, real love, doesn't work like that, at least not the way he imagined it. Then came the sentence he couldn't unhear. "You're not the man I fell in love with." It was soft, not cruel, just matter of fact. She said it like stating the weather. Like something she noticed but couldn't change. Daniel didn't cry, not then. He just nodded. But inside, he collapsed. He remembered every moment he held her when she cried, every time he reassured her when she doubted herself, every late-night drive just to bring her comfort food when she was anxious. And now, in his moment of need, she looked at him like a stranger, or worse, like a burden. And that's when something broke, not just his heart, but the version of himself that believed love was about always being enough. Because if love disappeared just because he struggled, what kind of love was it? Daniel didn't have the answer, not yet, but something inside whispered, there's more to this than what you see. And so he stopped asking, why did she change, and began asking something deeper. What if she didn't change at all? Daniel didn't find the answer in a friend, or a podcast, or even therapy. He found it in a book, an old second-hand copy of Carl Jung's Man and His Symbols, tucked away in a dusty corner of a used bookstore. He didn't know why he picked it up. Maybe it was the title. Maybe it was the quiet desperation in him, searching for something that made sense. He opened to a chapter on the shadow, and suddenly, it felt like someone had turned on the light inside a room he didn't know he was locked in. The shadow, Jung wrote, is the part of ourselves we don't want to see, not because it's evil, but because it's uncomfortable, messy, primitive. It's the part that acts before we think, fears before we speak, pulls away before we know why. And it exists in everyone, men, women, even the ones we love. Daniel read for hours. Every paragraph peeled back something raw. He wasn't just reading about psychology. He was reading about Emily, about her sudden distance, her withdrawal, her confusion. Jung didn't say she stopped loving him. He said something older took over, a part of her shaped by centuries of survival, a part that doesn't speak in words but in instincts, a part that asks without asking, can he still lead? Can he still protect me? Can he handle what I cannot name? Daniel sat with that because for the first time, her silence wasn't a betrayal, it was a reaction, not conscious, not cruel, just automatic. She wasn't punishing him. Her shadow was protecting her from uncertainty, from weakness, from a man she no longer felt could carry the weight. It wasn't fair, but it was real. And Daniel felt something shift, not anger, not blame, but a strange clarity. He saw her differently now, not as the girl who broke him, but as the woman whose instincts spoke louder than her promises. And that realization didn't hurt less, but it made sense. And sometimes sense is the first step toward healing. Daniel closed the book and stared out his apartment window, the same city, the same skyline, but everything felt different, because when you finally understand someone's shadow, you stop taking their actions personally. And when you stop taking it personally, you start reclaiming yourself. If you've ever felt abandoned for being honest, for being vulnerable, for being human, you're not alone. Drop a "still here" in the comments. Because if you've made it this far, you're not breaking, you're awakening. And Daniel, he was just getting started. The more Daniel read about Jung's shadow, the more something began to click, not just about Emily, but about every woman he had ever loved. Jung explained that the shadow isn't something a person creates. It's something evolution shapes. It's the survival code written deep beneath the layers of personality and politeness. And for women, that code is especially ancient. For most of human history, women didn't survive by brute force. They didn't go to war. They didn't rule cities. They read people. They had to because their safety, sometimes their very lives, depended on it. They learned to sense power, to detect uncertainty, to feel when a man was stable or slipping. It wasn't conscious. It was instinct, refined over thousands of years, passed down not in words but in reactions. Daniel began to understand something no one had taught him. When a woman loves you, it's real. But when her shadow senses you're no longer safe, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, that love starts to retract, not because she's cruel, but because her shadow is louder than her vows. Emily didn't wake up one morning and decide to fall out of love. Her shadow did. When Daniel cried in front of her, when he admitted he felt lost, her conscious mind may have said, "I still love him." But her instincts said, "He can't carry me through this." That shift, it's not about right or wrong, it's not about good or bad, it's biology. And biology doesn't care about poetry. Daniel thought love was about emotional honesty. He thought sharing his pain would pull her closer. But her shadow wasn't looking for connection. It was scanning for protection. And when it didn't feel it, it pulled her away. Daniel wrestled with this truth. It felt brutal, mechanical, but also strangely liberating. Because once you understand that love can be both beautiful and conditional, you stop bleeding for illusions. He looked back on their last few weeks together and saw things he had missed. The slight stiffening when he hesitated. The shift in her tone when he said, "I'm overwhelmed." The unspoken tension in her hugs. It wasn't rejection. It was recalibration, her shadow adjusting to a new emotional reality. Daniel didn't hate her for it. He just finally saw her completely, not as the dream girl, not as the heartbreaker, but as a human being shaped by forces even she didn't understand. And that realization changed everything. Because the next time he looked into a woman's eyes, he wouldn't just be looking for love. He'd be listening for the shadow behind it, for the question hiding behind every smile. Are you steady enough for both of us? Daniel wasn't sure yet, but he was learning not how to impress, not how to perform, but how to stand unmoved even when tested, and that was the beginning of power. There's a game every man is playing. The cruel part is, most don't know they're in it. Daniel had no idea either, until he started seeing the pattern. The moment he showed weakness, the ground shifted, not just with Emily, with others before her. Women who were once warm, nurturing, suddenly cold, withdrawn. He thought it was just bad timing, or that maybe he was too sensitive. But now he saw it differently. It wasn't timing, it wasn't him. It was the rules, unspoken, invisible, but ruthless. Jung never said women are manipulative. What he said was more unsettling. He said instincts are blind. They don't wait for logic. They don't ask for context. They just react. And women, especially when emotionally invested, test men. Not intentionally, not consciously, but biologically. They create tension. They withdraw. They provoke. Why? To feel something deeper than words. Can he handle me? Can he stay grounded when I unravel? Daniel replayed moments in his mind. Times when Emily picked fights over nothing. Times when her mood swung without warning. Back then, he scrambled, tried to fix, tried to soothe, tried to explain. But now he realized she wasn't looking for answers. She was watching his center. Would he collapse or would he remain still? The game wasn't about being right. It was about being rooted. And Daniel, he had been chasing harmony when she was testing for strength. That realization was jarring. All those times he thought he was failing her emotionally. He was actually failing himself. He was performing, begging, reacting, instead of leading. That word echoed, leading, not in a controlling way, not in some outdated macho fantasy, but in the purest sense, emotionally anchored, stable, clear. Women don't crave chaos. They want to feel safe in your steadiness. Not your money, not your status, your spine. And when that's missing, the game begins, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she needs to feel what she can't explain. Can I trust you with my emotional storm, or will you drown in it? Daniel had drowned before more than once, but now he was learning to breathe differently, not by holding on tighter, but by letting go of the need to be chosen, of the need to be comforted, of the need to be understood by someone who didn't understand herself. Because the moment you stop playing a game you never agreed to is the moment you start writing your own rules. Daniel didn't hate the game. He just stopped pretending it wasn't there. And in that quiet shift he began to rise. Daniel hit his breaking point on a Tuesday. No drama, no screaming, just silence. He sat on the edge of his bed, scrolling through old texts, rereading conversations that once made him feel alive. And now they felt like someone else's life, someone stronger, someone she once admired. That night he didn't cry, he didn't call her, he didn't try to win her back. He just sat with the weight of everything. It wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was something heavier, something deeper, grief, not just for Emily, but for the version of himself that had always believed love was enough. He had done everything right, listened, showed up, loved without holding back, and still he lost. That moment shattered something, but it also revealed something. He could keep bleeding for a version of love that didn't hold him when he needed it most, or he could choose something else, not anger. Not numbness, not revenge, something stronger, something real ownership. He asked himself the hardest question. What part of me allowed this? Not out of blame, but out of clarity. He saw how often he gave up his center, how often he made her the source of his peace, how often he silenced himself just to avoid her disapproval. He wasn't just hurt by her leaving. He was hurt by how much of himself he handed away. That night, he wrote something on a napkin, 4 words. I don't chase anymore. It wasn't a promise to never love again. It was a declaration, a shift, from seeking to standing, from proving to being, from needing to knowing. Daniel didn't become emotionless, he became grounded. And when you're grounded, you stop reacting, you start responding, you stop clinging to people who test you unconsciously, and you start attracting those who recognize your clarity. This wasn't a transformation anyone could see. There was no haircut, no gym selfie, no dramatic caption, just presence, stillness, weight, and it felt good, not like euphoria, more like exhale. He didn't need to be healed to be whole, he just needed to stop abandoning himself. That was the choice, the real one, not between holding on or letting go, but between breaking again or becoming the man who wouldn't. And Daniel, he made his choice in silence, because sometime the loudest shift is the one no one hears. Daniel didn't become unshakable overnight. There was no shortcut, no secret formula, just a quiet decision to start living by a different code. Jung didn't give him answers, he gave him tools, 3 principles, simple, but life-altering. The first one, be her mirror, not her servant. Daniel used to scramble every time Emily pulled away. He thought love meant chasing, explaining, soothing. But Jung taught him this. When a woman creates emotional storms, it's not always because she's angry. Sometimes she's testing, not consciously, not with malice, but with instinct. And when you chase her chaos, you fail the test. The mirror doesn't react, it reflects, calmly, unmoved. So Daniel practiced silence, stillness, presence. When someone pushed, he didn't push back. When someone withdrew, he stood still, not out of pride, but out of clarity. Because love doesn't grow in panic, it grows in gravity. Second principle, never let her control your emotions. Daniel used to think intimacy meant vulnerability without limit. That sharing everything, every fear, every doubt proved trust. But over time, he realized something painful. He had turned Emily into his therapist, his emotional anchor, his peace. And no woman wants to be your lifeline. She wants to lean on you, not carry you. So he stopped outsourcing his stability. He stopped making her his source of validation and started owning his inner world. If she brought peace, great. If she did, he had his own. Because a man who lets others govern his emotions will always be a prisoner, no matter how good his intentions. Third principle, use your shadow, don't suppress it. Daniel had spent years being the good guy. Always polite, always agreeable, always composed. But inside, there was anger, desire, drive. He buried it, tried to be safe. But Jung warned, a man who hides his shadow becomes weak, not because he lacks goodness, but because he lacks integration. So Daniel got honest with himself. He felt rage not at her, but at the version of himself who kept abandoning his own power. He didn't lash out, he channeled it. He let that fire become focus, that tension become discipline, that edge become clarity. Because women don't fear strong men, they fear unstable ones. Daniel didn't become cold, he became whole. And whole men don't chase. They attract, not because they play games, but because they live by alignment. You feel it in how they speak, how they pause, how they look at you, steady, present, unafraid. These three principles didn't turn Daniel into a superhero. They just turned him into a man, a full one. And in a world of emotional chaos, that kind of man is rare. But if you're listening to this, maybe that man is already waking up inside you. Daniel wasn't chasing strength anymore. He wasn't trying to look powerful, he was becoming whole. That's the difference most men never understand. They think they have to choose, be the nice guy or the alpha, be soft or be hard, be caring or be dominant. But real maturity isn't choosing one over the other, it's holding both without being consumed by either. Daniel didn't stop feeling. He still had moments of doubt. He still missed Emily sometimes. But he no longer let those feelings steer the wheel. They came, they passed, and he remained grounded because wholeness isn't perfection, it's presence. It's showing up fully without shrinking, without performing. He didn't need to be saved. He didn't need to be adored. He just needed to be Daniel unapologetically, completely, quietly, and something interesting happened. People noticed, not because he was louder, but because he was still. His energy felt different. Women responded to him with more curiosity, more respect, not because he used tricks, but because he carried weight. You could feel it in the way he entered a room, the way he listened, the way he said no without guilt. Daniel didn't try to be attractive. He became someone who respected himself too much to be anything else. That shift changed how he moved in relationships. He stopped texting out of insecurity, stopped oversharing to seek closeness. Stop tolerating chaos masked as passion. He didn't need drama to feel alive. He didn't need to fix anyone. He didn't need to convince someone to stay. Because a whole man knows you don't beg for what belongs in your life. And you don't grip tighter to what's already trying to leave. Daniel loved differently now, not with fear, not with fantasy, but with grounded affection. If someone entered his world, they entered a space of strength, of clarity, of peace. And if they left, he didn't chase. He blessed them silently and kept walking, because he had become a sanctuary, not a storm. And the more he honored that, the more life reflected it back. Daniel's journey wasn't about getting Emily back. It wasn't about proving his worth to anyone. It was about remembering something deeper, that he was never broken. He just forgot who he was, and now he remembered. There's a certain kind of man you can't shake. You can test him, confuse him, even try to walk away from him. And still he remains, not because he doesn't feel, but because he's not ruled by what he feels. Daniel had become that man. Emily reached out months later, just a simple message. Hey, I've been thinking about you. The kind of message that once would have sent his heart racing, that would have had him crafting the perfect reply, replaying memories, hoping. But not this time. This time he paused, read it again. And smiled, not because he was bitter, but because he was clear she hadn't done anything wrong, she just did what her instincts told her. And he had done what he needed to do. He had faced the pain, sat with the silence, listened to the part of himself that didn't need validation, only truth. He typed one line back. I hope you're doing well. No edge, no hook, no invitation, just peace. Because that's what happens when you become a man who can't be controlled. You don't seek closure, you become it. You don't demand respect, you embody it. You don't need to hold someone to feel whole, you hold yourself. Daniel didn't walk away from love. He just stopped chasing versions of it that required him to shrink. He wasn't afraid to feel anymore. He just didn't hand over the steering wheel to those feelings. And that's the kind of power the world can't give you. And no one can take from you. It's earned, in quiet moments. In nights when no one sees you rebuilding, in mornings where you rise not for applause, but because your soul says, stand up. This isn't about never being hurt again. It's about never letting that hurt define you again. It's about becoming the man who sees the shadow in her in himself and doesn't flinch. So if you've ever felt lost, if you've ever begged to be seen, if you've ever handed your peace to someone who didn't know what to do with it, let this be your reminder. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt. One truth at a time. Daniel's story isn't rare. It's yours. It's mine. It's every man who chose awareness over anger, stillness over chaos, depth over distraction. Now it's your turn not to chase, not to prove, but to live unshakable, unmoved, and completely yourself.